You know, I usually try to do a little clever intro, maybe every now and then, but what can I say? Today, I'm going to be talking about one of the best horror films ever made, personally, in my top three, Silence of the Lambs. Let's get it started. What's up, guys? Welcome back, and it's been a little bit. It's been about a month and a half, I think. So, let's get started by talking about one of my favorite films. One of my, I think it's either number two or three for my favorite horror films, up there with Jaws and Halloween. Definitely top three, and that would be Silence of the Lambs. And Silence of the Lambs, it's one of the best films in general. And today I'm just going to be talking about it. For anyone that hasn't seen it, then I'm going to keep it spoiler free. I'm just going to be talking a little bit into detail, not too much, not going to give anything away. But for the people that have seen it, I'm just going to go into some stuff that I like about it and just everything that makes this one of the best films ever been put to screen. So let's get started. So as you all know, Silence of the Lambs stars Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, and the story follows Clarice Starling, and she's an FBI trainee, and she gets sent to this big mental institution by her boss, Jack Crawford, to just interview and see if she could get any information about the recent murders that have been happening by a killer named Buffalo Bill, and she has to interview one of the most notorious serial killers ever, and that's Hannibal Lecter. So what you get for the rest of this film is just a horror thriller masterpiece. I'm not really a big fan of really long dialogue throughout a film. I really like it with certain directors, but this is just perfect. The dialogue is just perfect. First off, you get into this mental institution, and you're hearing all these things. The boss, he's talking about Hannibal. Then you're just told that he's a complete psychopath, and you get down like it's a dungeon, further and further into the prison. And Clarice, she has to go past these different inmates, and they're just completely psychotic. You can tell that they're crazed and disturbed, and your expectations, you're just expecting this big huge monster that how are you going to get anything out of this? Could this guy even speak to her and give her anything that's worth mentioning? But no, you just get this well mannered, polite Englishman. And that throws you off immediately if you haven't seen the film. It's amazing. It's so cool because it's like the ultimate what? You got to take a double take, because after all this buildup, you just expect this big monster that barely speaks, but you get this well-versed, well-mannered guy that just seems like he could be a normal dude that you could just meet on your own.
Morning.
And that's what's the best part about this film. It's so realistic, and that's with different serial killers like John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, and Ed Gein. They just seem like normal, average people, but underneath they got this huge dark past, and that's what you could get with Lecter and Buffalo Bill. They just seem like normal people, but they're serial killers, and that's just so cool. This film is so realistic, and that's what I love about it. It's not a slasher, it's not a ghost film, it's legitimate, engraved into reality. First and foremost, you're just introduced to this interesting, just really well written dialogue. This is based off of a novel, so obviously there's going to be some really great dialogue in it, just because that's the main source from what this media came from. And with Starling, you feel like you're with her, Clarice. And whenever she's talking to Lecter, it's almost like you're going through mental gymnastics, because this guy, he's so well versed, and he used to be a psychiatrist, so he gets into your head, and he tries to throw Starling off by mentioning things about her past and how Jack Crawford might want to have sex with her just because she's a younger agent. And Clarice, she just shakes it off. This shows how dedicated and how serious Clarice is about being an FBI agent. She really wants to learn about Buffalo Bill and see if she could get any leads off of Lecter. And after Lecter, it's almost like he's critiquing her, because he's just studying her and her mannerisms. And once she tries to get Lecter to give information about Buffalo Bill, he just completely shuts off, and then he mocks her for being from West Virginia and her accent.
Darling, you think you can dissect me with this blunt little tool?
No, I thought that your knowledge...
You're so ambitious, aren't you? Do you know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube, but But you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land?
And once she goes past all the other inmates, something happens. They're all screaming at her, and he calls for her to come back. And you can tell he has some sympathy for her. You can tell that he kind of realizes that she's just not some ditzy girl that decided to be in the FBI. Like, she's serious about it. And once Lecter shows sympathy to Starling, he gives her a tip about where Bill's first victim might be, and that's whenever the movie kicks it into high gear and it never stops. I love how the film just immediately kicks off once Lecter gives her a hint of where Bill's first victim might be. One scene I appreciate, I won't go on too long of a tangent like I've just been doing, but I'm going to try and stop. This film is extremely empowering for women, I believe, with Starling, her character. Her profession that she's in a really male-dominant profession, being in the FBI, and you can tell through her training montages that it's just a bunch of dudes and her one, like, girlfriend. It was in one scene, it was at a funeral home. She was just looking around once Jack Crawford left to talk to, I think, a sheriff. She looked around and there was just a bunch of male cops just eyeing her up and down, like, what are you doing here? What are you supposed to be doing here? But that's what I just think is so cool, because it shows that she's badass, she's tough, she can do whatever she wants, and she can do it better than the men can. That's just really cool, because you could do anything, you know? I don't even really want to mention much of the action, because my favorite scenes are when it's Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins just going back and forth. And speaking of that, most of those scenes weren't even filmed when the two of them were in the room, because to mention the cinematography, most of the shots are characters looking straight into the camera, into the lens, and that's just really interesting because you don't really see that. And the director said they wanted you to feel like you're in the character's shoes and you're just looking down the camera and making eye contact with them. And just like I was saying, like I was going on, just the scenes with Clarice and Hannibal just talking back and forth. For example, the quid pro quo scene. I really love how Starling and Lecter have a genuine conversation about Starling's past, and this is where it's sort of all revealed, and Lecter can start to really realize what's so troubled about Starling. I love this one line where Lecter's like,
"You're very frank, Clarice. I think it would be quite something to know you in private life."
Quid pro quo, Doctor.
it just shows you how disconnected he is from real human interactions in society itself. It's really cool. I love that scene. Quid pro quo scene. Awesome. Speaking of whenever Clarice started sharing her past, whenever Lecter, he just progressively peels back the layers like she's an onion, just progressively peeling back the layers till he gets to the core problem, and then you can really understand why is the title of the film Silence of the Lambs. It just, it's awesome, man. It really shows you how deep and how interesting this film is, because like a title like that, you'd be like, what is this movie about lambs? Yeah, whenever you find out Clarice's past and how troubled she really is and why she got into the FBI to begin with and what she's trying to prove and who she's trying to make proud, you really gain some respect for this film, because it just shows you that it's not cliche. It really gives you character development that actually matters, and that's it. All happens with Lecter and Jodie Foster. It's just really awesome, man. I love whenever Lecter and Clarice are together. That's the best part of the film, I think.
No, I came because I wanted to.
People will say we're in love.
It goes without saying that everybody in this film just did a tremendous job. Ted Levine as Buffalo Bill.
Put the fucking lotion in the basket!
What I love about Buffalo Bill is how many influences they took from actual serial killers. Like, whenever he's cutting up the bodies, that's exactly what Ed Gein did. He dug up graves, and he cut up bodies and made a woman's suit. And whenever he had the cast and he was pretending to be hurt and was trying to get the couch into the van, that's exactly what Ted Bundy did. He pretended to be hurt And he was good looking, and girls wanted to help him, and then he eventually led them into his car and murdered him and stuff. Everybody's performance was top notch. I believe this really elevated Jodie Foster. Sure, she was in Taxi Driver and a few other films, but this really got her on the map. And same with Anthony Hopkins. His filmography was really on a decline. Nobody really wanted Anthony Hopkins in films anymore. But then he came into this and knocked out of the park, and he was a bona fide star.
That was good.
I love that about this film. The director was just totally on point with his actors. He totally got them the full idea and the full picture, and that's why I think their performances was so great. And this is why this film, I mean, it's a horror film, but it won, I think, 5 or 4 Academy Awards. Man, and they deserve it, because this is a great film. The cinematography is amazing. It's some of the shots you just don't see anymore and you never saw before in film. The score is amazing. It makes you feel like you're in this world, and just it's so gloomy and eerie, and the lighting with Lecter in his cell, and the design of Lecter's chamber whenever he's in the hotel, and it looks like they're caging like a wild animal. It's amazing, man. Anthony Hopkins, Jodie Foster did amazing.
Most serial killers keep some sort of trophies from their victims.
I didn't.
No. No, you ate yours.
And this is why I give Silence of the Lambs a perfect 5 out of 5. And it definitely deserves it. So yeah, guys, that was Silence of the Lambs. It came out on Valentine's Day, 1994, I think. So it was sort of close to Valentine's Day, sort of close to the release, and mostly, oh, I'm wearing a shirt, a Silence of the Lambs shirt, Death Head Moth. What a coincidence. But it's 1 o'clock, guys. I'm extremely tired, but I would like to thank you all if you made it this far. You probably haven't, but if you did, thanks. I appreciate it. I really love this film, and it's one of my favorite films I just really wanted to review because it's been on my mind for quite a bit. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and enjoy some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.